You ever notice how every time California catches fire, Gavin Newsom finds someone else to blame? First, it's the weather, then it's climate change, then it's some mysterious arsonist. But this time, the victims aren't buying it. So today, whenever you happen to be watching the show, everything changes because the very people who lost everything in those Pacific Palisades fires are fighting back. And they just dropped a legal bomb on the governor of California himself. And if that wasn't enough to rattle Sacramento, wait until you see who's standing with them. Because while Gavin Newsom's hiding behind CNN interviews and talking points, Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino just walked into a federal courtroom, stared down a left-wing judge, and refused to apologize for defending his agents or his country. Now, this isn't just a story about fires and lawsuits anymore. This is a story about a system that's cracking under the weight of its own corruption. From Los Angeles to Chicago, from the burning hills of Pacific Palisades to the courtrooms where patriots are being dragged for doing their jobs, Americans are finally saying enough. You've got fire victims suing the state. You've got patriots like Bovino defying activist judges. You've got citizens fleeing California by the hundreds of thousands. And of course, you got Marjorie Taylor Greene flat out saying what everybody else has been afraid to say. Gavin Newsom may be criminally liable. Now, folks, this is what collapse looks like. And this is happening in real time. But this is what rebirth also looks like, because for the first time in years, ordinary Americans are uniting against the machine that tried to silence them. So buckle up, guys, because in the next few minutes, we're diving into how this lawsuit erupted, how Gavin Newsom's narrative is finally falling apart, how Bovino's defiance just exposed the left's hypocrisy, and how President Trump's America is watching California's meltdown as a warning to every blue state politician still clinging to power. The fire started in the hills, but the explosion is political, it's nationwide, and it's unstoppable. So let's get into it. Hit the like button, subscribe. Thousands of Pacific Palisades residents, families who watched their homes turn to ash, they're taking Gavin Newsom in the state of California to court. The claim that the inferno that destroyed their lives wasn't just started by an arsonist. It was fueled by years of bureaucratic neglect. Now, attorneys for the victims say state agencies completely ignored repeated warnings about overgrown brush, blocked local efforts to clear it, and then botched the response once the first spark hit the hillside. So this so-called smoking gun video shot by a hiker the next day shows embers still glowing while officials are bragging that the fire was fully contained. Thermal imaging was never used. There was no inspection ordered, and winds roared right back through the canyon like a blowtorch. And now, October 2025, those same residents, those same families, they're not asking for sympathy. They're demanding accountability, because this time the establishment can't just hide behind talking points or climate slogans. This is the people versus the system that left them in ashes. The fire may have started in the hills, but the blaze is now roaring straight towards Sacramento. So how did Gavin Newsom respond when the lawsuit dropped? Well, same way he always does, by blaming somebody else. He stood right before the cameras and pointed to a deranged arsonist, dismissing the victim's attorneys as opportunists chasing a payday. But the line fell flat because Californians still living out in motels and hotels and trailers, they don't feel optimistic. They don't feel opportunist. They feel betrayed. Now, within hours, outrage spread statewide. Small business owners who lost shops joined the suit. Local fire captains whispered that orders from Sacramento delayed containment efforts. And across social media, the hashtag #RecallGavinAgain began trending for the first time since his near-miss recall in 2021. Inside the Capitol, panic is visible. Newsom's advisors are begging him to stop attacking victims, but arrogance dies hard. That's right, guys. He's convinced that he can PR his way out of this one, like he typically does. What he doesn't understand, though, is that trust, once burned, doesn't grow back. He blames everyone but himself, and Californians are finally done listening to his lies, his nonsense. The lawsuits are spreading, the polls are dropping, and the governor who once styled himself as the future president / slimy salesman looks like a man who is watching his own political empire go up in flames. Now, your Medicare plan might look fine on the surface, but hidden gaps could leave you exposed. Out-of-network doctors, uncovered prescriptions, surprise costs. This is why I partner with Chapter. They find the gaps in your Medicare coverage before they cost you money. Now, one of our viewers told me, she said, Chapter uncovered things in my Medicare plan that I never even noticed. So let me ask, do you want to wait until those gaps hit, or do you want to join the majority already fixing them? Now, most people are already calling the phone number down on your screen right there, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. Oh, and listen to what one of our viewers had to say about their experience. Pamela Davis said, "Hey Ron, thanks for the info on Chapter. I was able to get into a new plan for 2020 2026, one that I asked for last year and was talked out of it. Paige has me positioned for a much better year financially than I've had in the last 6 years. Keep up the good work, brother. Hey, thank you so much for your comment. I really appreciate the very positive update, Pamela. God bless you and your family, and I'm so glad to hear the good news going into 2026 for you. And just when Gavin Newsom thought that he could hide behind legal jargon and photo ops, Marjorie Taylor Greene stepped in and dropped a bomb. She said it plain and simple: Gavin Newsom should be held criminally liable. Now, that's not just a headline. This is a shot across the bow of every Democrat who's used climate change as a political shield for their own incompetence. Greene's statement reignited a national conversation that the media has been desperate trying to bury. When does government negligence cross the line into criminal responsibility, right? And so she pointed to the evidence that's piling up: state parks ignoring their own inspection rules, failure to deploy thermal imaging, officials falsifying containment reports. The list goes on and on and on. And when she asked why not one state employee has been fired, investigated, or even suspended, there was silence. Liberal networks ignore the story. Not one segment on CNN, not one word from MSNBC, but conservative America heard it loud and clear. If you burn down livelihoods with policy failure and arrogance, you should be held accountable. Drop an accountable down below if you think they should be held accountable, guys. Now, Greene turned a local lawsuit into a national reckoning, and Newsom, he can't spin his way out of that spotlight. So now, while Newsom's dodging subpoenas in California, across the country, another fire is raging, this time inside of a Chicago courtroom. Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino walked in today under threat of contempt charges, accused of excessive force for deploying tear gas during an illegal immigration protest. The media calls it aggression. Patriots call it doing his job. Y'all let me know what you think it is, but the judge happens to be an Obama appointee, ordered Bovino to appear every single weekday for updates, turning a national security issue into a circus. Here's what's really wild, okay? Bovino didn't flinch. He told reporters, "I stand by my agents." He did what was necessary, and he would do it again. Now, that's leadership, guys. That's courage under pressure. And the contrast couldn't be clearer. In California, officials failed to protect citizens from literal flames, fires. In Chicago, federal agents protected citizens from the chaos, and now they're the ones that are on trial. It doesn't even make any sense. But are you guys seeing the pattern here? When liberals fail, they're called victims. But when patriots succeed, they're called criminals. Bovino has become a symbol of resistance. But just like those fire victims in California, there are two battles, same war. Americans doing what's right, punished by the same machine that's falling apart before our very eyes. And you can feel it, folks. Something is shifting in this country. For years, the elites have tried to divide America by geography, by class, by crisis. But now, fire victims in California and law enforcement officers in Chicago are fighting the same battle: corruption at the top and cowardice in leadership. This is what happens when regular Americans, blue-collar workers, border agents, firefighters, families finally look around and realize that they've been standing on the same side all along. The state burned their homes, the media burned their reputations, and now they're standing shoulder to shoulder saying enough, right? Drop an enough down below if you've had enough too. Now, you've got firefighters who risked their lives, border patrol agents who risked their careers, and citizens who've essentially lost everything, and they're all pushing back against the same political rot. This is bigger than just one lawsuit or one courtroom hearing. This is a full-blown awakening. Now, under President Trump, the American spirit that the left tried to smother is roaring back to life. And when victims and patriots unite under one banner, accountability, the establishment starts to panic. Because for the first time in decades, the people aren't waiting for permission to fight back. They're doing it on their own terms. And so while the lawsuits burn through Sacramento, another disaster is emptying California faster than any wildfire: the mass exodus. Now, people aren't just leaving for better weather. They're fleeing to survive. Families are packing up their U-Hauls, bound for Texas and Florida and Arizona, states where the state income taxes are either next to nothing or just flat out zero. Florida has no state income taxes. I think Texas has no state income taxes. Is there income tax in the state where you guys are living? Anyway, families are packing up the U-Hauls and they're leaving, and they're going to Texas, Florida, Arizona, where their taxes don't suffocate them and their leaders actually respect law enforcement. Now, let's talk facts here. California now ranks top 3 in cost of living, top 5 in electricity prices, number 1 in homelessness. I don't know where they rank in gas prices, probably number 1 for the highest and most expensive. How much are gas prices where you guys are at? And yet, Gavin Newsom stands on TV bragging about progress. Progress? Where grocery bills have doubled? where gas is like $7 a gallon and rent eats half your paycheck? What kind of progress is that? Even lifelong Democrats are throwing in the towel. Businesses are shutting their doors. Crime is rampant. Wildfires are just the exclamation point on decades and decades of failure. You can't call it paradise when half the population wants out of it. You know what I'm saying? And this is what ties all of this together. The fires, the lawsuits, the broken economy. It's the same disease. Government greed, no accountability, and a governor who's more focused on national ambition than his own burning state. Californians aren't just evacuating their neighborhoods. They're evacuating their faith in leadership. You would think that after everything that has happened, Gavin Newsom, he would lay low, show a little humility, but no, not that guy, not the slick-haired salesman. Just days after the lawsuit broke, he sat down on CNN for what his team called a reset interview. What America saw was not a reset. It was a meltdown. He bragged about $11 insulin, $25 minimum wages, universal pre-K, 600,000 apprenticeships. He rattled off some talking points like a teleprompter on autopilot. But not once did he mention the lawsuit. Not once did he acknowledge the families living out of hotel rooms and motel rooms and trailers. Not once did he say the words Pacific Palisades fire victims. But instead, he said, narrative matters. That's the problem. He's more obsessed with the story than the suffering. While he spins the narrative, Californians spin their wheels trying to survive. This is arrogance wrapped up in makeup and media training. He lists accomplishments while residents list everything that they lost. Homes, jobs, businesses, faith. This wasn't a governor defending his record. It was a salesman trying to convince the country that his failed state is a model for leadership. And this is why his approval rating is now circling the drain, because no narrative can hide the reality when everybody's living in it. And then, of course, there's Chicago, where a judge just tried to rewrite the Constitution in real time. She ordered Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino to appear in court every single weekday until further notice. Now, ordered him to hand over every body cam clip, every use of force report, like she's running DHS from her bench. Who is this lady even? How does she even have the authority to do this? This is the definition of judicial overreach, folks. An unelected judge now dictating how federal agents do their jobs, while real criminals are out there roaming free. She has turned law enforcement into a political punching bag, and the left cheers it on because it fits their anti-authority narrative. But here's what they won't admit. Bovino's agents were attacked. Rocks were thrown. Threats were made. Chaos erupted, and he made a call to protect his men. That's not abuse of power. That is leadership under fire. They won't handcuff the repeat offenders destroying Chicago, but they will handcuff the patriots that are defending it. You see, it is complete madness. And if this doesn't prove the system is upside down, then nothing will, guys. This isn't about justice. This is about control. The same control Newsom lost in California, the same control Biden's allies are losing nationwide. That is exactly why patriots like Bovino are refusing to bow. And so while chaos erupts in Democrat-run cities and courtrooms, something very different is happening in Washington. Because, folks, Donald J. Trump is back in the White House, and the tone of this country has changed overnight. Now, for the first time in years, accountability actually means something. Trump's Department of Homeland Security is backing Border Patrol. ICE agents are no longer forced to apologize for doing their jobs. FEMA is being rebuilt from the inside out to stop the kind of waste that left Californians stranded during those fires. The One Big Beautiful Bill passed earlier this year. It is now delivering new funding for enforcement, small business recovery, and veterans housing. Exactly the same kind of leadership that blue state governors said was impossible. So while Gavin Newsom blames, Trump builds. While these Chicago judges try to tie agents' hands, Trump's administration cuts the rope. That's why, for the first time in a long time, America feels like it's steering back toward law, order, and sanity. The contrast couldn't be sharper. A governor losing control of his own state and a president restoring control of a nation that almost forgot what strength even looked like. This right here, guys, this is the moment that history pivots. When victims, patriots, and ordinary citizens all reach the same conclusion that the system that they trusted has failed them and decided to reclaim it. I mean, you can feel it everywhere. Lawsuits in California, protests against judicial abuse in Chicago. Families are moving to freer states. Workers are refusing to bow to corporate censorship. America is snapping out of the trance. It's not about left or right anymore. It's about truth versus power. The same truth that burn through Californians' hills is burning through decades of lies, exposing every crack in the facade. And so for the first time, the establishment doesn't know how to contain it. So as the story unfolds, I want you to remember that this is not just a fire or a lawsuit. This is a signal, okay? This is a signal that the people are done being ruled by arrogance and incompetence. President Trump's America isn't just a presidency. It is a reminder of who's really running this country. Patriots, the workers, the people who refuse to quit when everything burns down. And that's the question I'm going to leave you with tonight. Are you watching the collapse or are you a part of the comeback? Y'all let me know.